Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Pi webinar. I'm Kim Martin, I'm Deputy Editor at the Pi, and really thank you so much to all of you for joining us today. As usual, please let us know in the chat box where in the world you are, and I'm delighted to be having this conversation today all about AI. So I want you all just to take a second to imagine a world where your team can spend way less time buried in repetitive tasks and instead doing more of what actually makes a difference. So that could be connecting with prospective students, crafting meaningful campaigns, or driving your institution forward. It sounds pretty good, and that's what we're here to talk about today is the promise of AI in higher education. So I'm absolutely delighted to be joined today by Alex Calder. He's from Anything is Possible and Jagged Edge. So as part of the integrated media, tech and creative agency, Anything is Possible, or AIP, Jagged Edge collaborates with institutions to harness the power of AI and drive success. So today we're going to have a presentation by Alex, and then we're going to come back together for more of a wider discussion on some of the things that we've heard about. As always, we'd love to hear your own questions and comments as we go. There is the chat box and there is a Q&A tab. So you can pop your own questions in there for Alex, and we'll come to those at the end. Alex, over to you.
Cool. Thank you, Kim. Hi, everyone. Lovely to see you all, and thank you for joining the webinar today. I'll get straight into the slides, and I will share my screen with you, first of all. We'll jump into that very quickly. Perfect. Can everybody see that? Are we all live? This is perfect. This is the only downside is because now I can't see anyone in here. So any questions, as Kim said, please do put them in the chat, and we can come back to things and answer all of those. So what are we going to talk about? So as Kim said, we're going to talk about how we approach AI, and particularly the promise of AI within higher education. And we're going to do that through the prism, through the lens of this idea of the ideal human to AI ratio. Before we get into that, I just wanted to talk a little bit about who we are and what we do. So we are, well, I'll start with who I am. So my name's Alex Calder, and I'm head of AI and tech consulting for Jagged Edge, which is our AI first innovation consultancy business, and also for Anything is Possible, which, as Kim said, is a full service media, creative and tech agency. So it's nice to start with a little bit about who we are and why we exist. So I think the thing for us is really thinking back to when you were a child. So when you were younger, there were no words like can't or won't or shouldn't. You know, when you're a child, you wake up in the morning and you want to be an astronaut, then at lunchtime you want to be a doctor, then in the evening you want to be a cat. You know, it's those kind of things. There is no limits. And we're very much focused on helping you to remove those limiting beliefs when it comes to your media and how you grow your institution. As you get older, you find yourself having to deal with change. And you hear those words, the can't and won't and shouldn't, and you start to settle for less than what's best and what's optimal. But we don't believe that. So we are Anything is Possible, and we've got some examples of possibilists on the screen here. So some of you may recognize Dick Fosbury up in the top left. So he was a high jumper, an Olympic high jumper, and he invented that technique that he's demonstrating in the clip there of the Fosbury flop. And up to that point, everybody was jumping forwards over the high jump, which now, in hindsight, you look back and you can't even imagine how people were jumping forwards over the high jump. But that technique, that Fosbury flop, enabled him to break records, and everyone subsequently adopted that technique. And that's very much our ethos. You know, we're looking for new ways of doing things, new ways of limiting those kind of old ways of thinking. And I think particularly in a time where technological change is incredible and the pace is phenomenal, political change is moving on in very, you know, sometimes good, sometimes very negative ways. Organizations that adopt old ways of thinking and kind of lean into what's done before are organizations that maybe are not going to survive and are not going to be as strong and forward thinking as they could be. So we're here to help with that forward thinking nature, and AI is a huge catalyst for some of that change. And we help businesses grow, and we help organizations. So we've doubled in size every year over the last 6 years. We've won awards across paid media, digital advertising. We've managed about £50 million worth of media spend. And we also partner with a business called Ecology to help plant trees and offset the carbon that is produced from media planning, advertising, and AI as well. We are education sector experts, but we are not education sector exclusive. So we work with organisations like the British Council, higher education partners, institutions in the UK, the US, Europe, business schools, traditional undergraduate universities. And we help them grow across all sorts of ways. But one of the key facilitators of that is the fact that we also work with other commercial organizations. So our second sector are arts, culture, heritage organizations like the British Museum, the British Library, the Tate, the National Gallery. And we are one of the UK's largest media buyers. And we work with almost every one of those cultural organizations in London. But we also work with commercial businesses. So we work with Associated British Foods, Best Western, Metabo, Mars Pet Care. And what that enables us to do is to bring a kind of commercial lens to how we help higher education. So we bring expertise from other sectors, whether it's different ways of running advertising campaigns, whether it's different new unique approaches to planning media, or whether it's solutions and technology from out of sector to help make everything that you do on a day-to-day basis much more efficient, much more effective. And within that, within the AIP group, we have Jagged Edge. And so Jagged Edge is our AI-first innovation consultancy business. And why we exist is to bring possibilism, so that removing your limiting beliefs, that new ways of working, to a range of organizations. And we've worked with University of Sussex, we've worked with the NSBCC, worked with Sheffield Hallam, a range of different commercial higher education clients to help with AI first innovation and change. And I'll talk a little bit about how we do that as we go through the presentation. So to set the scene a little bit, I've got this this quote here from Rishad Tabakawala, who talks a lot about technological change and has written quite extensively recently about AI and the change that that's bringing. And so something that he said, and we'll hear from him again later in this webinar, but he says, as the cost of knowledge goes to zero, every knowledge worker's job will change. And I think that's a really nice way of thinking about that development, the catalyst, the opportunity that AI brings to all of us on the webinar today. So what does it mean by the cost of knowledge going to zero? So it means that institutional knowledge, ways of working in marketing, in recruitment, in admissions, can be accessed through AI solutions in a very quick and easy way. And AI solutions are very, very good at the kind of problem solving that a lot of us do on a day-to-day basis. So very good at business logic, about change management, about initiatives in marketing. And so with that greater access to that kind of knowledge, it means that we need to adopt new ways of thinking and new ways of working alongside those different kinds of tools. So let's have a look at some of those tools and the current landscape. So Rahaf Hafoush here says AI is going to supercharge deep expertise and collapse those weak knowledge systems. So this is where the expertise comes into play. And when we're looking at AI solutions in this session, we're not just looking at how do you get started using ChatGPT or Copilot? It's actually how do you bring solutions powered by automation, AI, into your organizational structure? And how do you embed those in the student-facing elements of what you do, and also those kind of back office process side of things? And what we'll find is where there's weak connections, where there are manual task work being done by organizations, they are the things that are going to collapse as part of this kind of very, very significant change that we're going through with AI. And what will remain are organizations that have that deep expertise in what they do, that deep knowledge that goes beyond, the surface level, enabling them to construct more intricate networks of getting work done. So let's just talk about some of those tools. So you may have heard of most, if not all, of these platforms. So with ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude on the kind of large language model side of things. HeyGen, if any of you haven't tried that, definitely worth having a look. That's where you can kind of create video content based on, a short video clip of yourself talking. You can create an AI avatar to spread the message, kind of translate that into multiple languages. It's a really useful way of engaging prospective students. Some of the search platforms, so Perplexity, image creations like Midjourney and DALL-E. But I just want to kind of take a moment to think about kind of one situation that we've seen literally in the last week. So up until a couple of weeks ago, the vast majority of people had never heard of this platform, DeepSeek, which is a Chinese LLM, so very similar to ChatGPT. I just wanted to highlight the change that's coming and is brought about by these tools. So as of a couple of weeks ago, NVIDIA had phenomenal market growth. So over the course of last year, they grew phenomenally based on the fact that their chips are the ones used to power the training and the processing and the compute power that goes into creating these large language models. Then last week or the week before, DeepSeek came along, and it is claimed by them, trained on data in a much, much more cost-efficient, technology-effective way to produce the same results as an LLM like ChatGPT. And so what does that do? So instantly, that knocked about $500 billion off the market value of NVIDIA, because suddenly, potentially, there's the ability to do what they were doing, but on a much, much, much more cost-effective scale. Is there the need for all of those computing chips, all of that computing power to produce those kind of results? And that kind of market change is something that is really, we saw it recently with lots of other examples. There's organizations in the sector, Chegg would be a good example of that, who've seen similar kind of falls in their market value based on AI solutions coming in and superseding what they do. So this kind of change is coming, this kind of change is here, and it impacts businesses very, very quickly. So what we'll talk about is kind of a framework and approach for supporting with that kind of insurance against these huge shifts. So thinking about that, and AI as a kind of change driver. So I mentioned we'd be hearing from Rishad again. So this quote here, he says, the true differentiator in the AI age will be human intelligence. People will need AI to compete, just as today without the web, mobile phones and other tech, an individual or company cannot compete. So it's this idea of these tools becoming commonplace, and the value is the human element, the creativity, the strategic work that can be done only by people, only by individuals. And we'll talk about how to achieve that in a second. So what does that look like? So this chart is one of my favorite ones that I do as part of our AI training and consultancy work. And on the left-hand side here, we've kind of got the legacy way of working. So this donut chart, imagine that's the working day. So we've got a chunk here of time for upskilling. We've got a chunk of time for high cognition work. The majority of our day, however, gets taken up with that task work. So we say here, low value, error prone, repetitive tasks. I don't think low value is necessarily right, because this could be something as simple as keeping the CRM system up to date. That is not in itself inherently low value, but it is repetitive. Anything repetitive becomes error prone, despite potentially laddering up to something of more value. So where can we get to with AI? So the idea is, for the same costs and with the same people, we move to this AI-enabled world on the right-hand side. So this is where we have time in still for task work, but we've shrunk that down considerably. We've still got time for upskilling, so training, webinars like this, all of those kind of areas of upskilling and learning new things. But the majority of our day becomes available for that high cognition work. So that is the high value, the strategic, the meaningful work that we get out of bed in the morning to do. So this is where we want to do. I think quite often with AI, there's an idea that it's going to replace human expertise. Or even people within teams. And that's not where we want to get to with this. What we want to get to is being able to manage our work within budget in a more cost-effective way, and enabling the teams to add the real value where that value can be most effectively felt. So in that high cognition work, in that strategic and meaningful work. So what are some of those high value skills for future student marketing, recruitment, admissions teams? So that task work could be things like social media posting, simple data entry and report generation. These are all things that could be automated. Triaging applications before they get reviewed by a real person. Initial CV screening, routine admin, scheduling interviews, those kind of things. Those are the kind of tasks that we can utilize AI and automation to help us solve. And what does that free up us to do? It's about that strategic campaign development. So thinking about marketing campaigns on a much, much more strategic level. Personalizing the applicant journey and that engagement. Creative content creation, strategic outreach, building networks and relationships, and having strategic partnerships with other organizations, other universities, and as well with our own teams. So how do we get there? So our framework for getting there is what we call the human to AI ratio. So imagine you've got a team of 5 people in your organization. They might all be using AI on a small level. Let's say they're all using ChatGPT to help them with some copywriting. So maybe because they're using those tools, they are each getting a 20% boost on the output that they would have had pre-AI. When you think about it, across that team of 5, if they're all using AI to achieve 20% more, then that equates to an additional member of the team. So what we say here is that human to AI ratio is 5-1. So with many teams, we need to set out what does the best, most ideal human to AI ratio actually look like. And that might be, in very student-facing teams, 5-1 might be a great ratio. In teams where we can deliver more automation, more AI-focused completion of task work, maybe it looks more like 2-4 or 2-5. So we're having those teams using AI in the most effective way in order to deliver the most output that they possibly can. And it's about understanding what's right for those teams, what's right for that organization, and auditing and mapping that out properly, and understanding the things to then set in place to move the needle on that AI ratio to become the optimal ratio. So what are some of those things? So for marketing, it might be that we're using AI to do our personalized messaging at scale. So a potential student might land on the website, they get an AI generated message talking about, relevant content to the ad that they've initially seen, maybe helping to drive through to open day registrations, prospectus downloads, those kind of things. So messaging that's really helps to drive them through the funnel, but would be wasted to have a human doing that, and you wouldn't be able to do it on that kind of scale. And what does that free up the human to do? It's that creative storytelling piece. So it's the narrative of the ad through to the landing page, the content on there, how that tells the message of the institution. Similarly, for recruitment and admissions, it might be assisting with the initial triage of applications, freeing up time for more direct involvement with potential students where they've got, brilliant applications, or where you might want to have more of a human interface there. And then for operations, so it's automating admin. The great example of this kind of thing, I think, is like calendar scheduling tools. So it might, you might not think they are, not pure AI, but all of that automation side of things really helps speed up time rather than going backwards and forwards to get a meeting booked in. Using a tool like Calendly or features built into Google Calendar can really help speed that process up, freeing us up for more strategic decision making, for more of the conversations. So what are the dimensions and the scoring that we want to look at with the human to AI ratio? So I think a big part is that effectiveness of AI in individual workflows, visibility of decision making with those tools, efficiency, so gains in productivity and outcomes, the student experience, so making sure that there's a balance of AI and the human touch points in the student journey, and scalability, so readiness for new tools, future growth, upskilling. And what we do is we score each of those kind of key dimensions from 1 to 25 with undeveloped, emerging, optimized, leading as our kind of criteria. So I just wanted to give you an example of what that would look like for a university. So here's one that we've done for another organization, for another university. And so these are the kind of the indicators. So underdeveloped, it might be the case that AI is rarely used. Marketing remains kind of highly manual. Team lacks AI training. When we move into that emerging area, so AI is used for simple automation. So like I was describing, scheduling, reporting, but strategic decision-making is still mostly manual. Optimize, so AI assisting in personalization, campaign optimization, content generation, which leads to kind of measurable efficiency gains. And then where it's leading, it's kind of fully integrated into those workflows. So it provides predictive insights, decision support, and marketing becomes almost AI augmented with a strategy to move that ratio. So these are the kind of things that we're looking for. And how do you start to think about this? Well, I think one of the really interesting things, and I think I love this slide as well, but this is how, or just a nice way of thinking about AI as in the context of how it's changing what we do on a daily basis. And I think where we are here is this change in how we interact with computers. So if you think right down in early days of computing, you interacted with a computer through punch cards. Over time, into the 70s and the 80s, that became more graphical. Search in the 90s, late 90s, was a big transformational way of interacting with computers. And I think, if you think how often something that you're doing searches starts with a search, or starts with, interest or research, or kind of gathering insight on something that you're going to do next, I think it's phenomenal. The iPhone kind of put all of that in the palms of our hands. And then OpenAI, ChatGPT kind of started that transition into a more natural language way of interacting with computers and getting results. I was at an event recently, a technology in marketing event. A big theme that came out of there was the idea that CRM systems are very ripe for disruption with AI. Because if you think of what a CRM system is, it's a tool that sits on top of your institutional data and allows you to ask questions of it or to take action. And that's very similar to how AI can influence what we do. It might be you've got big data sets about prospective student information, and AI can be a layer on top of that where you start to query it, ask questions about it. So I think what's happening with CRM systems is a really interesting area to kind of keep an eye on. So we also have this idea of kind of moving from awareness of AI tools, processes, through to that kind of fully actioned AI setup. So it might be that many teams on the call today have kind of started using ChatGPT for copywriting. Maybe they're doing a bit of personalization with AI, campaign optimization, so utilizing tools like Google's Performance Max and other platform-specific tools. And a lot of those are kind of out of the box. So, you can get started with any of those very, very quickly and easily. Where it then requires a bit more kind of bespoke thinking and planning comes into that world of AI curation on student journeys, kind of optimizing advertising content placement as well, and whether that's in advertising campaigns or further down the funnel in terms of email nurture and that side of things. And then augmenting that student engagement. This is kind of where we get into the world of more bespoke consultancy and more bespoke technology solutions being built for institutions to do this. So, for example, we work with the British Council, and we help them build an AI-powered persona tool. So they've got all of their persona data across PDFs, insight reports, all of those different kind of data sources. But layering AI solutions on top of that enables you to engage with those, have good conversations with your personas, and help make your marketing more tailored and more targeted to those personas themselves. So these kind of three areas are where we really want to focus. So there is training, consultancy, and, as I said just then, tech solutions as well. So on the training, we run AI induction sessions. It is my favorite part of my job to run these AI sessions with universities to talk about, the lay of the land in terms of platforms, how you can get using these solutions very quickly. And that really helps for teams to really understand how to mitigate risk. So, it might be thinking about policy guidelines and things like that as part of that. Helps teams to understand the art of the possible in terms of what the opportunities are, and helps you to stay competitive. Lots of institutions are starting to adopt these solutions, and so it's important for universities to keep up to speed. We also kind of do much more bespoke consultancy, and I'll talk a little bit through our process of that in a second. And those tech solutions. So I mentioned this tool from the British Council earlier, but this is just an example of that, where you can engage with your personas, with your digital twins. You can ask them questions in this kind of chat interface, and then you can use that information to power your marketing, sense check copy and creative, and create much more dedicated, personalized journeys for those students. So a little case study about some work that we're doing with a university at the moment. So this is our framework for creating AI solutions with universities. So this is the process that we work on with those universities. So what we would do is kind of go into a bit of a consultancy phase. So speaking to marketing teams, recruitment teams, admissions teams on what are the challenges that they're facing day to day. And that doesn't have to be from the lens of AI. Really, it's open to any kind of work that they're doing on that day-to-day basis. What comes out of that are a long list of user stories, essentially. So I'm a marketing exec and I need to write content for the website, for example. We then look at kind of creating some priorities of those and rolling out AI pilot programs for those particular challenges. And with that, we kind of define what good looks like. So is that time saving, cost reduction, scalability across the teams? We help universities to build plans for that. So what's the KPIs? What's the scope? What are the resources we need to do this really well? And then we support the teams with the implementation of those solutions. So for example, it might be AI tools for marketing copywriting. So we look at that, we look at how are they going to be kind of putting a strategic lens on that, what are the guardrails around that implementation, and how we can make sure that that's run in an effective way. We monitor and measure the impact that it's having so that we can understand the improvements, operational costs, what is needed for scalability. And then we analyze that against our benchmarks and report all of that back to kind of senior leadership teams across universities. And ultimately what that leads on is, like, if we solve 2 or 3 of those particular challenges, then we can look at what's the next step. So what are the bigger challenges? What are the more longer term bits of work that we can focus on together? So we did this with a university recently. I just wanted to share kind of some of the results from that. So we help them from an efficiency and effectiveness basis. So helping them to reduce that kind of manual workload by 30%, so that they can then focus on that creativity, the strategy side of things. We helped student engagement as well. So one of the solutions that we looked at there was kind of a multi-touch email and chatbot nurture strategy. And that increased student engagement with those tools by 12% and helps that flow through from inquiry into applicant. And we also help them with some of those AI-powered marketing initiatives to cut their cost per lead by 18% as well. So all of these solutions kind of come together and help organizations be more effective, more efficient with their advertising spends. So what's next? So I just wanted to share some of these findings actually from the American Association of Colleges and Universities. They ran a survey recently, and there were 3 things that really stood out to me. So the first one is that difference between faculty, marketing teams, admissions, recruitment, and the students themselves. So is, I think 60% or more of their school students use AI tools. I think that's probably an understatement. I was on the train into the office this morning, and I was sitting next to a college student who had their notes on one knee, ChatGPT open on their phone on the other, literally copying out notes across those from ChatGPT to their handwritten notes. So I think lots and lots of students are using these tools on a very regular basis. But the kind of challenge there, the difference comes in the fact that only, in this case, 40% of faculty are using AI as part of their jobs. So we need to level out that difference and make sure that we're leading from an organizational level. Also, positive impact. So 45% of higher education leaders think the impact of AI in the next 5 years on their institutions will be more positive than negative. So we do, I think, need to lead with an enthusiasm and a positiveness for this technology and these tools. There are lots and lots of challenges around AI. I think there's two big ones. So there is the ethics and the copyright side of things. I think there's also the environmental impact that AI solutions have. So these are big challenges to be grappled with. I went to a summit at the EU in Brussels recently, and that was a big topic of conversation there about how do you think about watermarking AI generated content, putting the guardrails in place around that, and that absolutely needs to be done. On an environmental perspective, I mentioned earlier, we partner with Ecology to offset the carbon produced by media campaigns. And I think we need to start thinking globally about how we do that from an AI perspective. Potentially some of this, if DeepSeek are training models in more effective ways, then there's, opportunities there to, save on some of the energy and the power required to output this content. But these are big challenges to grapple with, but I do think we need to lead positively. And then thirdly, competition. So 38% of the people surveyed perceive their institutions to be about average in using AI, but 20% say their schools are below average. So I think there's a real opportunity for organizations to really take advantage of this and push for you bringing in that kind of human to AI audit ethos and ways of thinking. Everybody is being asked to do less, asked to be doing more work with less budget. And I think these tools are a great solution to that and something that we should be exploring. So finally, I just wanted to share, we kind of start off with 2 different ways of working with organizations. So we've got an AI introduction training, so perfect for marketing, recruitment teams. We'll talk about what's out there in the world, what are the tools in terms of SEO, media planning, advertising, conversion rate optimization, and help you develop that roadmap from there. We also have more advanced innovation consultancy. So actually some of what I talked about pilot plans, developing those kind of implementation frameworks. And so we can kind of talk about either of those sessions with anyone on the call. And actually anyone who's joined the webinar as well, if you scan the QR code there and get in touch with us, fill out the form by the end of the month, then we'll do either one of these sessions, but also a bespoke free audit, so looking at that human to AI ratio to understand where we can move the needle, where we can add more value. And then an additional review in Q3, just to kind of check in on what we've been doing, how you've been getting on, and just a kind of complementary touch point to see what the next opportunities are. Wonderful. Well, that is everything from my presentation. So I will stop sharing my slides and we will come back to Kim.
Thanks, Alex. That was fascinating. I just want to go back to one of your very first slides. So you mentioned all the different clients that you work with, all the different organizations that you work with, and there really was a nice varied mix there. And it just got me thinking about how you quite often hear about how higher education is perhaps lagging behind other industries or is kind of slower to adapt to new technologies. Is that something you've seen in your work? Do you agree with that statement?
It's an interesting one. So yes, I think there are that dichotomy. I think that difference between how students are engaging with these tools so quickly, so effectively, but also I think that idea of organizations in universities in particular are at the cutting edge, like really at the forefront of AI development from an academic perspective. And a huge amount of this work is being done by organizations to drive these models forward, to train these tools, to come up with the processes to do it. And then you meet the marketing team and they struggle to get access to ChatGPT because it's not in the guardrails and it's not in the policies and things like that. So I think that's the real challenge. It's that difference, and helping organizations to do that better, more effectively is really interesting. I think as well, the student audience is so savvy. It's so, like I mentioned, we work with we work with cultural organizations, we work with commercial brands, we have a wide variety of audiences that we reach through advertising. The student audience is the quickest to see through any nonsense from the campaigns, and that's that's the best audience to have, because it enables you to do brilliant work and to push really hard. And so with that, I think we need to make sure that we're focusing on AI usage. It's not about using Midjourney to create a load of fake campus shots and put them out as your advertising. It's about really driving internal efficiencies and processes, and using it at a much more strategic level to do that kind of work. And that's the opportunity.
Okay, great. For our audience, I do just want to signpost you to some poll questions that we have. So it's the kind of third icon down, and there's two questions for you. One's about how often you're using AI, and one's how you're feeling about AI. So I'll give you a couple of minutes. I'll put some of my own questions to Alex, and then we can go back to that and see how you're feeling. Alex, so what kind of university processes would you say are most ripe for AI integration?
So I think this is a really good question, because it's kind of what our starting point, I think, in terms of our consulting relationship with universities, is to ask exactly that question. I think from what we find, it's very much, we need to think about student-facing processes. So it's helping to support with all of the content that marketing teams get asked to create on a daily basis. I always think it's a marketing manager at a university has got one eye on the website, one eye on advertising content, one eye on the prospectus, one eye on a bus ad in Nigeria. It's there is so much variety in terms of what you have to do. So helping with some consistency on that student facing element. So looking at what does good student content, copy and things like that for the website, how does that feed into SEO creation and optimization as well, is incredibly important. And then it's also thinking about some of the more, I suppose, back office side of things. So it's about making sure that, meetings run smoothly, think about meeting note takers, enabling people to focus on like engaging in the calls, engaging in the meetings, rather than worrying about their like hastily handwritten notes. So we built our own tool to do that. So we've built a platform called AI Pete, who joins our calls and takes meeting notes, summarizes those, and forwards those on to the relevant stakeholders after the calls. So it's those kind of things as well. Like, that's happening all the time at universities, and having that kind of content in one place is really efficient. And then we kind of go broader than that, and we start to think about actually what does student engagement look like in terms of, I always say chatbots, but chatbots, I think we have a very negative view of them. Like, we kind of think about those like, if this then that chatbots, and it's very frustrating. It's not giving you a good answer or a good solution. But what I mean by chatbots is, if you think about your interactions with ChatGPT, it's that natural language way of working, but fueled by the data and insight for an institution. So on a practical level, that could be open days, dates, or application deadlines, or scholarship information. It's those kind of things, feeding those tools to enable prospective students to have much more engaged conversations before they reach a human.
Okay. Let's just quickly go to these poll questions. So the first question was, how often are you using AI in your day-to-day? So about 50% have said daily. Does that surprise you at all, Alex?
I would say so. No, I think that kind of 50%, and then about 20% on 2 to 3, 30% on once a week. I would say that's quite a common split that we come across. And I think what that is indicative of is that like massive market share that tools like ChatGPT have got in a relatively short space of time. Like, bringing them into our daily lives very quickly. But I think what happens then is that we get stuck with that. So we use ChatGPT to help us with some copywriting, but we don't kind of go beyond that. But I think it's also, 50% and 30%, that difference between daily usage and once a week or less and it has just shifted in front of my very eyes. So now it's now it's 44% daily, 33% once a week or less. So again, it's kind of starting to even out there a little bit in terms of some people not really touching these tools at all. And I think, just looking at our other poll question, which is what best describes how you feel about AI right now: excited, nervous, or skeptical? And really, it's kind of like a trick question, that one, because I think most people feel a combination of all three, if not many more emotions about it. It is right to be excited. And I mentioned that kind of leading with like positivity and enthusiasm. It is incredibly exciting. Like, I am excited every day by the things that you can do with, even just with ChatGPT, with those kind of tools. But it's also right to be nervous, the thinking about the change that's here, and what that means for us as kind of knowledge workers and people in the sector. And skeptical, only 6% are skeptical. I think a healthy skepticism is so important, and I think that is because we, not through any negative, like bad actors out there building tools that are just kind of vaporware or a scam. I think we've seen this with DeepSeek. It's like these things can just cause monumental amount of change and can kind of be ripped away from under you. So I think it's, for a university in particular, that skepticism is very healthy, because you don't want to just be procuring off-the-shelf AI tools from vendors who potentially may not be around, through no ill will of their own, in 6 months' time. It's just the technology might change. So the real value is about building things yourself and having that understanding internally about what does that mean? What are the things that we want to build AI solutions around? And then obviously working with partners to help you do that, but ensuring that you own the kind of underlying ecosystem, the data, and that data is not going anywhere else, and that the tools are adding value to what you do.
Okay, and within that kind of nervousness or skepticism, what are some of the kind of common misconceptions about integrating AI that you see quite often when you're interacting with universities who are kind of looking to explore this some more?
Yeah, I think so. Common misconceptions would be around challenges around policy. I think there's often I think a great example of this actually would be that trepidation, I suppose, around using AI tools and the integrity of kind of your own first party data and that side of things. So, first of all, it's incredibly important to be using AI tools that are brand safe, that are not sending your data out to be processed as part of the training model. So using a free version of ChatGPT and uploading personally identifiable information, commercially sensitive information, is not what you should be doing at all. But the common misconception around that, I think, is that if you do that, then somebody else can ask for the University of XYZ's commercial data and download that straight away. So that's not how those models work. But you need to be building those models or building on top of those models in safe environments. So that example of that British Council tool,
Mm.
all of that data is entirely owned by them. It's all kind of there on their systems, on their servers, and then the large language model kind of just sits on top of that.
Okay. Um, I guess something that's really important to mention is the fact that kind of budget cuts, job reductions, deficits are really widespread challenges across the sector. I feel like every day I'm writing about, a new, however many jobs going at this university, or a report about a kind of really hefty deficit. And so I wanted to get your view on how effective adoption of AI can play a part in kind of achieving cost effectiveness for universities or for the sector as a whole?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, we're living in very difficult times for the sector, I think, and we work with a lot of UK universities, institutions that are struggling with application volumes, whether that's domestic kind of competitiveness, whether that's international students, and every marketing team is being asked to do more with less. So I think we are also at the point of incredible opportunity with that. And I think the opportunity that we have to layer in AI tools to make our marketing, recruitment, admissions teams more effective is incredibly exciting in that sense. I think there are solutions that we can do to enable the teams that we have to deliver more. I think there will always be questions and initiatives around kind of restructuring of organizations, of marketing teams. I think personally, my role, my job is to help those marketing teams with the people that they have to enable them to do more, so that you've got that basis of people in the organization, but they're achieving double the output that they could do before. And that's where AI has the opportunity to do that. It's about saving time in the day, and it's about having a more engaged, impactful, happy workforce. I think these tools, we should be we should be taking advantage of them. Like, we should be using these tools to enable us to do the work that we want to do and that we want our teams to do. So I think there's tremendous opportunity, and that's really kind of the bread and butter of what we do with universities, is to help them achieve that.
Okay, and I think let's quickly go to a couple of audience questions because we've got about 10 minutes left, and I want to come back and ask you some kind of bigger picture, forward looking questions at the very end, but let's see what our audience are saying first. Um, let's go for this one. How can AI tools assist universities in measuring the effectiveness of their recruitment strategies?
Cool. So I think this is one of the best use cases for these kind of solutions. So what we want to be doing with recruitment strategies is, first of all, centralizing the data around them. So bringing in data sources from the advertising that's happening over there, getting that data into one kind of place, thinking about the CRM system on the other, and bringing together those kind of different data sources in order to then layer AI over the top to enable us to ask questions of that. So I've got a similar example of this from something that we did internally as an organization. So I ran a survey for just to kind of like find out internally within the agency, what challenges were getting in the way of, the day-to-day work, what kind of potential challenges can we solve with AI. And from a survey like that, you get lots of different types of data back. So you get some quant, some qual, like a mixture of, rate this 1 to 5, or like free text answers. And that's a very hard thing to analyze and to understand and to pull it all together, and would take, a couple of days, certainly probably a week of my time to do. Someone much cleverer than me, much more market research focused, would be able to do it more quicker. But AI was my friend in that challenge, because I could then look at kind of uploading those data sets, getting it to model out the themes that were coming from those different kinds of data types, and then understanding really the so what, the kind of what should I do next? Why does this matter? And that's incredibly applicable here for recruitment strategies. So it might be looking at the effectiveness of email campaigns. It might be looking at the effectiveness of marketing campaigns. It might be looking at touch points across the website to understand where people are coming from and how you can then drive them through the funnel more effectively. So there are lots and lots of solutions for that measurement.
Okay, and next question. We've got one. Someone's looking for some recommendations. Juhani says, can you recommend any free AI agent creators or builders that do not require any coding? I would like to build an AI agent to collate and report on some mundane work, such as scraping reporting on all universities' application deadlines.
Absolutely. So what I would do, my recommendation would be going to look at a website called agent.ai, which is a business set up by one of the founders of HubSpot, the CRM platform. And he has got really into kind of these AI agents, and was thinking about AI agents, long before they were becoming more kind of common currency. And there are some tools on there that I think will probably do exactly what you're looking to do there, particularly that kind of scraping, reporting on university deadlines. Try that. There's also a search, like an AI search tool called Perplexity, which might be able to help you with that as well. But do reach out. I mean, I'm more than happy to have a chat about that offline, because that sounds like a really interesting project.
Perfect. All right. Hope that one's helpful. And next question we have is from Yolanda. Have you ever looked at the potential of universities using AI tools to help them deal with administration process of government-funded programs? If yes, at which stage do you think would be most beneficial for universities to use AI tools?
Cool. So it's not something that we have worked on directly around kind of that particular administration process, but we do work with a lot of universities on kind of management of student recruitment around different programs. Management, actually, a nice example comes from some of our arts and culture clients. So there's a whole kind of Google search will give you kind of different ad grants as part of that. So kind of subsidized ad platforms and subsidized ad budget. And we have used AI scripts as part of that to manage the distribution of that budget across, multiple exhibitions, multiple platforms as well. So yeah, so it's very possible to do. And again, we can definitely kind of pick that up offline and have a deeper conversation about that.
Fab. And final audience question. Does the release of DeepSeek provide any opportunities for universities looking to bring more AI into their processes?
Yes, I think the short answer is yes. I think what DeepSeek has shown, or certainly this is my interpretation of it, is that actually pre DeepSeek. So let's take us back to like the middle of last year. I think where people were thinking about the value of AI solutions was very much on that LLM side of things. It's like, I think a lot of people would say, what's the point of building XYZ tool? Isn't that just a wrapper for ChatGPT? And I think actually organizations that have built smart, user-friendly, well-designed wrappers for LLMs are now in the perfect place when something like DeepSeek comes along, because what that does is massively lower the cost of the LLM side of things. So that AI layer that enables you to have conversations with data fundamentally massively lowers the cost of that, so that then those businesses are adding a huge amount more value at a much greater margin. So, and that applies for universities. So if you're building tools that are using those more cost effective models, then your work is going to go much further, and you're going to be able to have a hugely increased impact than otherwise. So yeah, I think it's a positive thing, and I think it's a really interesting thing.
Definitely really interesting stuff. We have a couple of minutes left. So, Alex, the next 5 years for higher education, what's it looking like in terms of AI? What's changing? What's staying the same?
I mean, almost impossible to say. I think, like in any kind of specifics. I think if we were sat here in 2021, I don't think we could have predicted anything that was going to change in terms of like the access to these tools, the proliferation, the kind of ease of use of them. But I think in kind of broader terms, the key things that are going to change is that ability to have conversations with prospective students in a scaled, personalized, and much more relevant way for them. So what I mean by that is I think that conversations with students, or with prospective students, is going to get much easier to have, because you've got a framework of delivering personalization at scale to them, so that then rather than worry about kind of creating lead nurture journeys in a marketing automation platform, or thinking about how to implement pop-ups on the website and things like that, it's actually more about thinking about what those tools look like, those LLM tools, putting in your ultimate strategy for that conversation with students, and then executing that across multiple channels, multiple ways, in a very straightforward way. So I think that's a big thing. AI agents are going to be huge. We've kind of touched on AI agents a little bit already. And what we mean by an AI agent is when an AI can perform a task based on another AI telling it what to do, essentially. So it can go off, it can bring data from this area over here, it can get data from this area over here, and synthesize that together and actually take action. So we've seen some so Claude, which is a similar LLM to ChatGPT, they've got a computer use mode where the AI can see your screen and interact with elements on it. ChatGPT have released their operator model in the US recently. So those kind of things are I think, where we'll see the real transformation. I think thinking a bit more outside of the kind of prism of marketing and recruitment, I think going back to our slide with the 60% of students are using AI tools, that's only going to increase. And students are going to look for better ways to engage with the work, engage with the ideas. And if AI is going to deliver, specific, bespoke, relevant content to them, then those are the solutions. And so we do need to be thinking about it on a teaching perspective as well.
Okay, nice. Well, for our audience, if there's anything you missed, Alex gave us lots of really great recommendations. I learned a lot, so this will be available to replay, so you don't have to worry too much if you've missed anything. I can only just encourage you all to click the green button below, if you're interested in learning more, and there was that nice deal for you as well. But otherwise, Alex, thank you so much for a really interesting conversation today. And thanks so much for our audience for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and it was wonderful to speak to everyone.